Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to, I guess for now, it's a working title podcast as we still kind of come up with the name, but extremely excited to be bringing this to you all and watching this thing. Hopefully, help me, help my co-host here next to me, which I'll introduce, and hopefully help some of you out there in kind of your walks in life and where you are. But thrilled to be here and thrilled to be with my dad. First podcast we're doing together. We actually recorded one sports podcast years together on my show, had him on as a guest to talk some football. And this is the first non-sports podcast I think I've ever done. So excited to do that. But first, without further ado, my dad, Dave Dyrud. How you doing, Dad?
I am doing good. It's a cold day in Denver, Colorado, but we're enjoying our first snow of the season and excited to be doing a podcast with you. I've never done a podcast, period. So this is my very first go at any kind of a podcast, but you've done a lot of them. So I'm excited about how you're going to lead us in this process. And I love talking about what we're going to talk about. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun and hopefully powerful, but quickly the basis, then we can dive deeper into it and obviously get some background. But, our thought is, in today's day and age, the masculinity of man is not what we can say once was, not what it should be, and not where we want to see it going moving forward. So we want to kind of dive into that. Related to everyday life, we're going to go through a great book written by Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy. So there's my sports tie. We can tie sports in that way, called Uncommon, and we'll be able to kind of go chapter by chapter, include some scripture, and then relate it to everyday life. Because I think a lot of what people see in church and Bible studies, and this is no knock on the church system or anything like that, but a lot of it can be unrelatable depending on who the person delivering the message is. And so, we want to be able to say, hey, this is what scripture says, this is what we've seen in this book, and now this is what we see every single day and how it ties in and how we can be that. So we'll discuss that more here in a minute, but my dad here was a pastor for, was it 25 plus years?
20 years.
20 years.
Preached 1,150 odd sermons over those years. I calculated out.
A lot. So yeah, pastor for many years. Obviously, I grew up in that as a PK, and lots of great memories there. And my dad was involved in ministry, obviously, long before that, and is still involved in ministry, just not necessarily in the pastoral role, but still, doing the good work. And I've been saying for years, because of this technology we have and because how people consume content, I'm like, Dad, you got to get on the mic. I know you were on a mic in person for so many years, but now you can send your message to so many more people that maybe weren't there. And so I'm glad we're finally able to do that. And you accepted my invite to be on the microphone to this podcast. So thank you for that, Pops.
Yeah, it actually was tough to accept because I have the personality where I like to be in the background. I don't like recognition, but I care deeply about men. I care deeply about how God designed us as men. And is it okay if I share a verse out of Proverbs that's one of my favorite as it relates to the subject that we're going to talk about?
Yes, please.
Yeah, in Proverbs 31, and oftentimes in the church, people think of that as the chapter about the godly woman, but it actually starts off as a message to men. And the mother of the author of this chapter is giving him encouragement. And he was a king. He was ruling a nation, the nation of Israel. And she says this to him. She says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those who are being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice." And I think that is such a powerful message to us as men. And it's a call that God has given us. Our role as men is not to dominate and crush, but to lift up and support those around us and to help other people flourish through the resources, through the strength, through the power that we might have. So that's kind of what I think about when I think of the topic of manliness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll get your I want to hear, and you kind of alluded to it, but I want to hear why this topic is a passion of yours and why it's so important for where we are in society. But I think for me, when you look at sports, or specifically, I'll just look at business, being a small business owner and trying to be a leader in that regard, so many leaders throughout time, rightfully or wrongfully, have led kind of with that iron fist mentality. And there's always this mantra, if you will, that, having sympathy and love and compassion is a sign of weakness, if you will. And today, especially, it's reverted course so much so that maybe it's gone too much overboard. Like, you still need that masculinity, but compassion, integrity, kindness is all a part of that masculinity. So I think if we're able to kind of unpeel the onion a bit about what that truly looks like and how you can lead and be a good leader and be strong and be in, a manly form, but still be compassionate and integrity. So I think that's what I'm excited about in the terms of business, sport, how you lead your household, all of that, all wrapped into one. But for you, why is this such a passion topic for you?
I think part of the reason is I'm 56 now, so I've lived quite a bit of life, and I've watched in those years how culture has changed. And I will say right off the bat, there have been people who have misused masculinity a lot over the years. There's abuse because of it, both sexual, emotional, physical. People have used the strength of our manliness to elevate themselves, both in career, and we've stepped over the top of others. So there has been a lot of abuse, but the way God designed masculinity is using our strength for the flourishing of others. And the culture that we're in today, it seems like when people talk about masculinity in men, it's actually being talked about in a negative way now, because of the abuses of the past that maybe they have experienced. And then people are lifting up masculinity in females. We're elevating that. We're making that something that is being prized in culture, and femininity in men is being prized in culture. And this is my personal belief, but I believe it's an overreaction to abuse rather than taking a step back and saying, okay, how did God design us to live out masculinity, not in a way that leads to abuse, but in a way that leads to building up people and supporting people and causing people to be able to live a greater life than they could live without it. So I'm excited to be part of that conversation because I think there's a lot of value in men living out godly masculinity. And I think we can talk through with kind of the outline that we're going to look at least this first handful of months that Tony Dungy laid out for us, where he talks about character and integrity and really powerful things. We're going to use that as our launching point to ask, how do these characters, these qualities come into us as men living out godly masculinity?
Yeah, absolutely. And we could talk probably a long time at this right now, but we'll wait till we get into the book that we can relay and keep this kind of as a teaser for what we want to do. But there's so much, you know, different direction out there, and people saying so many different things and what you should be and what you shouldn't be. And I think when you bring it back to scripture and look at what God intended and look at how we can be that influence as men and be that leader and protector and building people up with your manliness, I think that's what we were excited to get into. So I can't wait to go through it with you, Pop, and hopefully bring some insight and have some fun along the way. And hopefully, we'll get a couple people to listen in. And hey, maybe with all your connections in the church, we can have some great guests on potentially here and there, and really, unify this and see where it goes. So I'm thrilled and excited to be doing this with you.
I am equally thrilled. So I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to learn and grow in this process.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be just fine. So we'll be just fine. So, well, yeah, there's the teaser. So excited to be a weekly podcast here, going through the book Uncommon by Tony Dungy. If anybody out there wants to follow along with us, we'll have notes and everything in the descriptions every time we publish. So couldn't be more thrilled, and thanks for coming along this journey. And as we go along, we'll ask for questions from people if we can answer and whatnot, and we'll kind of learn along the way exactly how we want to format this, which I think is exciting about doing a podcast in this format. So, but Pop, excited to do it and excited to get into it with you, and we'll talk to everyone here in a week as we go through chapter 1 of Uncommon. Talk to you all then.